So let's go ahead and learn about CSS, or cascading style sheets. This is going to be the main thing that we're going to be using for formatting our web pages. In modern day web pages, most of your styling is really going to be done in CSS. You want your HTML to be as minimal as possible. So the first thing we're going to do is make a new HTML document. So we're going to set that up. Alright, and we are going to save this. Well, actually, first of all here, go into Web Design. Make a new folder called CSS stuff. Inside the CSS stuff folder, make a new folder called CSS. And also make another folder called IMG. Alright, so then go ahead and save this document, this HTML document. Go into Web Design, CSS stuff, and save it as index.html. Alright, and the idea here is that we are going to be styling a text on a web page. So we're going to start off just by adding content to this web page, and most of this is, I'm just copying this off of something, so I'm not just coming up with this off the top of my head, but I'd like you to follow along and type the same thing. So we're going to be looking at something called classes today. And classes are really, they function almost exactly like IDs. The only difference is that classes are typically used more than once, while IDs are usually not used more than once. And the way they're referenced in CSS is going to be different. But the way they work is exactly the same. But they're just used for different purposes. So if you really want to, you can actually just, you can write your own text if you want to. It doesn't necessarily have to match mine, but make sure that you're using the same sort of, tags, because those are going to, that's what's really that's really what the crux of this entire lesson is supposed to be. We're going to be learning about CSS and then how to reference various elements in an HTML document. So at this point, you can feel free to pause the video, skip ahead a little bit until this is actually done. Okay, so go ahead and save, and let's make sure that this is actually showing up. All right, so we got all this text, and that's what we want. So the next thing we're going to do is make a new document, and we're just going to title this one style.css. And this is just like the this is just as important as saying .html in front of an HTML document. It's very important that you say .css. Okay, so then we want to make sure that the purpose of the link tag is to link to another external file. So in this case, we're linking to, actually we want to change this to css/style.css, otherwise we won't be able to find it. Alright, so then we save it, and just to make sure that things are working correctly, let's go ahead and just do something like, something simple. Maybe body, and then background color, and then we'll make it something like sort of, make it something dark. Save it, open the HTML file, and what do we get? Cool. So that is what we want. I don't know if I like that color though. Let's try something else. We'll keep it for now. We can change that if we want to. So CSS is what's called a selector-based language, and the way that works is we have various selectors that allow us to reference various things in our HTML file. So right now, this is a body selector. That's called a type selector. And what that means is we're saying that we want this characteristic. It means we want this property to have this value in this section. So in the body type, we want the background color to be FFFFAA. All right, but that was just to see if it was working properly. I'm gonna take that out for now. So let's go ahead and add a little bit more styling to the page. So let's say that we want every H1 to be in this font family. And you can explore font family a lot more, so the ones that are available to you are fairly, you know, kind of things that you'd expect in any typical text editor, but you can actually basically use any font that you want. You can use something like Google APIs to download your own font. That's something that web developers will do quite a lot. Font size, we'll say 250%. So that makes the font size a lot bigger. So 250%, so 2.5 times as big as it currently is. I'm going to use a property called text shadow. And I think you'll get an idea of what text shadow does. But basically what it does is it applies a shadow of a particular color all around the element. And if you remember padding, that is the space between the content and the container. So it's going to create a little buffer between the header and whatever comes after it. All right, so if we look in this, if we look in the file, the only thing that H1 is going to affect is this where it says Briard. But let's see if it works. All right, awesome. So it went ahead and it made it very bold, and it created this gray shadow underneath, to the right, to the bottom. Okay. So let's just go ahead and add some more stuff. So this, once again, this is another type selector. This is selecting the type H2. So we're going to add something called Gil Sans. So we have the property font family, and then the value Gil Sans Arial Sans Serif. We'll make the font size a little smaller, So 90%. We'll transform everything into uppercase using the text transform property. Letter spacing. We'll make the letter spacing more than usual. So there you go. So I should mention that EM is a way of doing things relatively. So what this is saying is we want the letter spacing to be 0.2 times the spacing that it usually is. So EM is a kind of a useful thing, but it can be kind of disastrous if it's not used right. Let's go ahead and just add one type selector for H3. We'll just make the font size 150%. Go ahead and check that out. Okay, so nothing too exciting quite yet, but let's go ahead and add some, some more interesting things. So you can actually select multiple, you can use multiple type selectors like this by putting commas underneath, and this is saying that, okay, everything in here we want to apply to H1, we want to apply to H2, we want to apply to H3, and we want to apply to A tags. And let's make the font weight normal, and then let's make the color, yeah, it should be good. And we'll make the margin 0 pixels. So we want no space between these elements. So if we save that, open this in the browser. Alright, so we're starting to get a little bit more styling, so everything, that color was applied to all of these. Okay, and let's add some more things. We can add some padding to the body. Now let's go ahead and add some styling to paragraphs. So we'll make the font family Arial, Verdana Sans Serif. We'll make the line height 1.4. And basically what that's saying is we want the height of a typical paragraph to be extended by about 40%, so 1.4 times what it currently is. And we'll play around with that, so I'll show you how that works. And then we'll make the color a little bit different. Grab one of these. Okay. Alright, so let's see the changes that we made. So you can see that there's a lot of space between the lines. So on the other hand, if I do something like this, where I do 0.4, let's try that. We'll open that in the browser. So now there's very little space between the lines, so it looks kind of, bad. So let's go ahead and make it back, put it back to 1.4. Alright, so let's add something for the class credits. So to apply something to a class, you put dot in front of it and then the name of the class. So like dot credits would apply to the class with the name credits. And we'll say something like font style italic. So we want the font to be italicized. And then we'll align the text to the right. So that makes the text stick to the right side of the page as far as it can go. So there you go. That's where that goes. So before it was over here to the left, now it's over on the right because we text aligned it. Alright, so for the anchor tags, I'm going to say text decoration none. And the reason I'm doing that is because by default, links are underlined. So let's remove that decoration because we're about to do something kind of cool. So there you go. So we removed that underline. Now let's go ahead and add something else. And This is going to be an action, so it's when we say a hover, what that means is we want this to happen when we hover over it. So we'll say text decoration, underline. So basically what we want is we don't want it to be underlined initially, but if we hover over it, we want the text to be underlined. And we can also change the color. So let's change the color to like... Just change the color to something else. So when we put our cursor over Briard, it changes to that color. So let's say, let me show you a bit more about CSS selectors. So we've learned about a few types of selectors. We've learned about type selectors. We've learned about class selectors. But there's other things that there are other kinds of selectors that we can use. So for example, let's say we just have a section tag down here. Let's get these IDs as well. We don't want them to have the same ID. Second line and then third line. All right. So let's say we want some sort of styling to be applied only to the paragraphs at the end. So right now it's taking the styling of these paragraphs. But let's say, for example, we want to add some additional styling to them. But we don't want that styling to be applied to the previous paragraphs. What we can say is we can use something called a child selector. So we can do something like section, and then we use that tag like that, and we'll say P. So what that's saying is any P that's inside of a section type. And we can do something like, you know, make the font size bigger. Like that. And let's say we want to just want to apply something to just each of these paragraphs individually. We can reference each ID by using a hashtag and then the name of the ID. We'll do the same thing for the rest of them. So second line, third line. Open that in the browser. It's the third line is practically invisible because I made it white. So, yeah. So now that you know a little bit more about CSS selectors, go ahead and apply this to your own web projects. And we're going to be using CSS to apply layouts and formatting to our page in our next projects.